There's kind of like a bullying culture there, where there's always someone who's on the bottom. No one handles the grievances while I'm gone. So there's grievances that get dropped. And I come back and I have to have conversations with members that say, look, basically, I know that your termination was unfair. Unfortunately, we've missed the timeline to respond to your employer, and we're not going to be able to pursue these grievances. So Sergio's response to that situation was just to demote me and tell me I was no longer doing grievances. She ended up having a lot of members angry about her termination. So they would show up to the local periodically and just demand to speak to Sergio about, you know, her termination and talk about how she was a good organizer, how, you know, she was one of the people that was really helping us, and now she's gone. So that was an interesting one, because workers were really upset about that, and they would just show up at conventions and just go off. And it was a nightmare for Sergio. Like, he hated it because he never knew when one of our members, and this was a really, really dedicated member, activist, strong leader, has helped us out in many of our campaigns. She speaks 5 different languages. I mean, very, very vital member. She was brutally assaulted at work by her foreman at the airport. And she was taken to the police department inside of the port. Now, she was questioned for 4 hours inside of that police department. They wouldn't allow anyone to go in there with her. They wouldn't allow her husband to go in there with her. They wouldn't allow her to have an interpreter. And her English is not her first language. So they do. And the following day, she came into the union hall because I said, your workplace injury report, it has to be done perfectly.
Was this a sexual assault?
This is a sexual assault. So just knowing her employer and knowing how badly the workplace injury reports are done, I wanted to be able to do it myself just to make sure that it was done right. So she comes in and I help her with her report. And during that conversation, my supervisor comes into my office while I'm interviewing her and while I'm helping her with the report. The secretary treasurer of the local comes into my office while I'm talking to her and doing the report. And then Sergio is watching, pacing back and forth in front of my office while I'm doing the report. I'm noticing this and I'm thinking, okay, what's going on, you know? Not even an hour later, I was told that I'm no longer doing grievances this very second. You need to move offices immediately. I'm no longer allowed to do intakes with members. And if this member wants any help, she can come back and she could talk to who we tell her to talk to. Now, this is one of our activists. This is one of our strongest members. She was assaulted at the workplace. We are a union. So there was nothing inappropriate about her coming to her union for help in that regard. That was the moment where I said, okay, I'd always planned on leaving the local because I knew about the problems. I knew it was impossible to change, but I felt that at that time, I can't leave the members to this team. There's absolutely no way that I can leave the members in this team in good faith, you know. This particular employer is the biggest employer that we have. We have a lot of what's called memorandums of understanding with this employer that are outside of the CBA that no one knows about. I would find out about them accidentally when I would do a grievance, and the employer would say, have you read the side letter agreement? And I'd be like, what side letter agreement? So it was always like, oh, there's a side letter agreement, huh? And I found that I was generally discouraged from pursuing things very far with this employer. It's the one who comes in and doesn't understand that they're in this unincorporated area and they're not entitled to these benefits under their CBA. No one tells them this until they call us and say, why am I getting paid less than my coworker who works in the building across the street?
Or all of a sudden they find they don't have benefits or something.
I think, like, as a rep, I was a really effective rep. I really like systems. I like documentation. I like tracking. And I like to make sure that, okay, we see these loopholes in our current contract. Let's make sure during the next bargaining session we address these areas that the employer can exploit, right? So I started to see, okay, I do see that I have some ability to help out in this field, and I also felt that there's no one right now who's going to run against Sergio, and Sergio has completely lost his grasp on the membership. He's lost touch. I think he's just done the job. I think that with one employer in particular, there's a relationship between them and the union that's just unhealthy. It's completely, I think that there are those cozy relationships that exist, and sometimes they blur those boundaries, but there's one that's just blatantly unhealthy, where the members that work for that contractor are just being exploited. I mean, pure and simple, they're being physically harassed, they're being called names, their religion is being talked about, their hygiene is being talked about, they're not honoring seniority, their workers are getting injured, they're giving them the runaround with reporting the injuries. I mean, they're just completely going after these members. They've got bad management, and leadership doesn't have any desire to check that bad management, so it's just a nightmare with this employer. 5-point program, and the program is not terribly revolutionary. You know, it's something that I think should be in place at all unions, right? So there needs to be more transparency in the side letter MOUs department. We believe that also leaders, members of the union, need to have more involvement in these campaigns. So that means developing the campaigns, working on the campaigns, and being accountable for the success of the campaigns. So that goes beyond organizers developing the campaigns and telling you this is what you're going to do. They need to be involved in the process from beginning to end, right? Right now, I think members feel just really disempowered. They feel that I can come to this rally and I can agree, I can speak these talking points that you gave me, and that's all I can do. But I think perhaps that's not welcome right now. It's you do what we tell you to do, and you don't want to do that, you're anti-union. So members pay dues, and one of the things they want to see in their dues process, they want representation. So if my employer is doing something that violates our contract, I pay dues to a union, and they're going to protect me. That is something that we fell down on. We're not very good at that a lot of times. But you can't call people and say, hey, I need you to come out to this rally tomorrow. Because they said, last week I called and when I was being harassed and no one called me back. So why would I come out to this rally? A lot of it has to do with effective representation. When you do a good job on a grievance, and then you call a member and say, hey, can you come out tomorrow? This is really important. They say, of course, I'll be there, because they have some confidence in this institution.
In other words, if the union fights for the members, the members will fight for the union.
Definitely.
So what do you think of the idea of that the full-time organizers for the union, what you call staff, should be elected by the members they represent?
I think it'd be hard. I think that would be hard. It's not necessarily a bad idea. I think that at least the executive board should have some say in the hiring process. And so right now, there are problems where certain union members don't even want certain staff in their building. They don't bring them here. I don't want to see them. And that has to deal with the way that staff members talk to members. It's very belittling, it's very degrading, it's sometimes really unprofessional, sometimes it's profane. And we've got to model the behavior we'd like to see. So if they come to the union and they see bullying, and they see the exact same things at their workplace that they're fighting against, it's going to make them less likely to want to come. So
view is, on the one hand, the leadership tends to be in bed with management, and on the other hand, they tend to be in bed with the representatives of management in the political realm, which is the Democratic Party.
Right.
And you have, in Seattle, you have the example of Shama Sawant, which I supported her, although at this point I'm very critical of her, because I think she's not going far enough, and she's too close to the Sergio Salinas' of the world.
Right.
But in any case, that view that she represents of labor breaking with the Democrats and putting its own candidates forward, you know, and basing themselves on the needs of the workers, period.
Right.
Would you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, I do. I do think we need to have a political program, but I don't think we need to have a political program in lieu of organizing. So
it's not just a matter of, like, to me, of just endorsing this, that, or the other candidate, but joining together with the other forces that actually represent working class people.
Right.
Whether it be a student group or a community group or some group campaigning on the issue of immigrant rights or racism, of us joining together and saying, okay, this is our candidate and this is what they're going to fight for, rather than waiting for somebody else to...
I think it'll happen slowly. So there are, you know, some scary words out there, like, you know, no local. Prior to Sawant's win, there wasn't a single SEIU that endorsed her. Now all of a sudden that she's, you know, she's won, we are all, you know, in love with Sawant, right? But we have this very, very scary relationship with the word socialist. We don't necessarily want to be identified with anyone that's called a socialist. We don't want to be identified with someone from this organization because politically they're against this organization who we're a part of too, right? So there's all of these unnecessary politics that come into play when we're trying to organize for our members, and they get in the way of progress. So I think we'll have to change those traditions. Hopefully that will change with leadership. So regardless of what happens, the voice of the members have been heard in this campaign. And it's not something that could ever be swept under the rug again. And it's